Aging is often portrayed through extremes, either as a period of decline and irrelevance or as a time of carefree leisure. But the truth is far more nuanced. Growing old is a deeply personal, layered experience that touches every aspect of a person's life. Beyond the surface of wrinkles and retirement lies a blend of physical transformation, emotional challenges, surprising joys, and a new sense of perspective. In this exploration, we peel back the layers to examine the raw, honest reality of aging. Physical changes and limitations. The physical changes that come with aging are often the first, and sometimes the most jarring, reminders that time is moving forward. Muscles weaken, joints stiffen, and reflexes slow down. What once felt automatic, getting out of bed, climbing stairs, even turning a doorknob, can start to require thought, effort, and sometimes pain. Eyesight dims, hearing fades, and recovery from illness or injury takes longer than it used to. These physical limitations can be frustrating, especially for those who have lived active, independent lives. There's a subtle grief in realizing that the body no longer responds as it once did. But there is also adaptation. Older adults often learn to listen more closely to their bodies, adjusting routines and lifestyles to accommodate new realities. This shift can bring about a kind of mindfulness that was absent in earlier years. Many become more in tune with their physical selves, aware of each ache, each heartbeat, each breath in a way that fosters both humility and respect for the body's endurance. There's also gratitude for the parts that still work, for the moments of strength, for the days when pain recedes. At times, these changes lead to fear, especially when facing chronic illness, diminished mobility, or the looming possibility of dependency. But intertwined with that fear is resilience. Aging bodies may not move as quickly, but they carry the history of decades of childbirths, hard labor, dances, hugs, injuries survived, and illnesses conquered. Each wrinkle and scar becomes a marker of life lived. And despite the betrayals of the body, many older adults find a surprising strength in working with what they have rather than mourning what they've lost. The quiet struggle with loneliness with age often comes a slow, creeping sense of isolation that few people talk about openly. Friends begin to pass away, partners may be lost, and children, now grown, have busy lives of their own. Retirement can strip away the daily interactions that once filled the hours, leaving behind long stretches of quiet. The social world begins to contract, and for many older adults, this shrinking circle can feel like a slow disappearance. Even when surrounded by others, there's a unique kind of loneliness that comes from feeling left behind by a faster-moving world. This isolation can be especially pronounced for those who live alone or have limited mobility. Technology, while a lifeline for some, can also widen the gap. Text messages replacing phone calls, social media filled with experiences that seem out of reach. And yet, there is a strength that emerges from solitude. Many older individuals begin to explore new forms of connection: community centers, book clubs, support groups, and even online friendships. These spaces provide more than just company. They offer understanding, shared experiences, and the comforting knowledge that one is not alone in feeling alone. There's also an introspective quality to this stage of life. The stillness can lead to profound self-reflection and an appreciation of presence that younger years may not allow. While loneliness remains a real and painful part of aging, it also carves out room for personal growth, quiet joys, and the discovery of a deeper connection with oneself. The growth of wisdom and perspective. One of the most powerful and often overlooked aspects of growing older is the deep well of wisdom that accumulates over time. Life, with all its triumphs and heartbreaks, teaches lessons that no book or lecture ever could. The elderly carry within them decades of experience, of raising families, building careers, navigating relationships, and surviving loss. Through these lived experiences comes a clarity about what truly matters and what doesn't. There's less urgency to chase after recognition, wealth, or approval. Instead, there is a sharper focus on authenticity, purpose, and peace. This perspective often brings with it a profound sense of acceptance. Aging teaches that life rarely unfolds exactly as planned, and that's okay. The disappointments that once felt unbearable become part of a larger, more forgiving narrative. There's an understanding that pain and joy are not opposites but companions, intertwined in every life story. Older adults often become storytellers and mentors, not because they seek to teach, but because they have quietly learned how to live. Moreover, the awareness of mortality, while sometimes sobering, also deepens the appreciation of life itself. A sunset, a conversation, a quiet morning can feel sacred in ways that are hard to grasp in youth. This presence, this slowing down, allows for moments of grace and deep gratitude. Far from being irrelevant, the wisdom of age becomes a guiding light not just for the individual, but for those around them, if we are willing to listen. Letting go of external validation as people age, one of the most liberating shifts that often occurs is the quiet release from the need to please others or live according to external expectations. In youth and middle age, life can be a constant performance, striving for success, social approval, polished appearances, and validation from peers or society. But with age comes a beautiful defiance, the growing realization that much of what once felt urgent or important simply doesn't matter anymore. Older adults often speak of a sense of freedom that blossoms with age, not from responsibility, but from self-consciousness. There's less pressure to fit in, impress, or compete. Fashion choices become more about comfort than trends. Opinions are shared more freely, not to provoke, but because the filter of fear has loosened. There is power in saying no without guilt, in setting boundaries without explanation, in living for oneself rather than for an audience. This detachment from external validation doesn't mean becoming indifferent to others. It means living more honestly. Without the burden of trying to measure up, many older people become truer versions of themselves. They pursue passions that had been long delayed, speak truths they once swallowed, and embrace imperfections they once tried to hide. Aging, then, becomes not a fading of self, but a return to it. Finding joy in the small things in the quieter rhythm of older age, joy often begins to take on a new form, less tied to ambition or excitement and more rooted in simplicity and presence. With the hustle of earlier decades behind them, many older adults find themselves drawn to the beauty of ordinary moments. A warm cup of tea in the morning, the sound of birds outside the window, the feel of sunlight on the skin. These small experiences, once rushed past, now carry immense meaning. This shift isn't about settling, it's about deepening. With age often comes a slower pace of life, and in that slowness, there's space for appreciation. The laughter of a grandchild, the pages of a well-worn book, the familiar comfort of a routine. These things may seem small, but they become daily anchors of joy and peace. Even mundane tasks, like watering plants or preparing a meal, take on a meditative quality when approached with intention and care. For many, the drive to accumulate or achieve gives way to the desire to savor. Life becomes less about doing and more about being. This doesn't mean that big moments lose their importance, but rather that the small ones are finally given the reverence they deserve. In this way, aging teaches a vital lesson, that happiness is not always found in grand gestures, but often in the quiet, unnoticed corners of everyday life. To grow old is to undergo a profound transformation, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It is not merely the passage of time, but the layering of experience, the shedding of illusions, and the emergence of deeper truths. Aging brings with it undeniable challenges. The body weakens, relationships change, and solitude can become more familiar than we'd like. But it also brings unexpected gifts, clarity, resilience, self-acceptance, and a heightened sensitivity to the beauty of everyday life. In a world that often glorifies youth and vitality, the realities of aging are too often hidden or feared. But those who have lived long lives understand something essential, that life does not stop being meaningful with age, it simply evolves. The definition of fulfillment changes. Joy becomes quieter, wisdom grows louder, and there is freedom in no longer needing to be anyone but yourself. Ultimately, to age is to live more fully, more honestly, and more tenderly, with others and with oneself. It is a journey not of fading, but of deepening. And for all its complexities, growing old is not something to dread, but something to honor. Because within the lines on the face and the slow steps of age lies a story worth listening to, and a life still rich with meaning.